Alfredo is very determined and maintains a positive outlook on his situation. He told me about his share of struggles upon arriving in Canada.
I was expecting some difficulties to get my license and to start working as a physician in Canada. I was aware, like would be for anyone moving from any country to another country, that there are some barriers and there are some obstacles. The thing that made me feel worse was the uncertainty. I didn't realize that I was going to have to compete with such a large number, over 600 people, and I didn't realize how many trained and well-trained physicians there were in this country from different countries, and you don't even know if you will be ever able to practice medicine.
In order to practice medicine, Alfredo took a job as a nurse and worked in small towns in BC.
I know that my situation is quite unusual because I don't know of anyone that was a doctor first and then became a nurse. And I've been asked this question many times. I don't think that it's your title that makes who you are. I just would like to get into residency at this point because it's my next step. But I don't have any regrets in having to be a nurse.
Even after working almost 10 years as a nurse and after passing all the required exams, I can't understand why Alfredo has not been granted a residency. By now, I have realized that finding a position as an immigrant medical doctor in Canada is next to impossible. I can't imagine what it must be like for those IMDs who have just arrived.
I came here to hear something more optimistic.
Okay.
And I don't.
Well, I mean, newbies, the brand new people, they're excited when they show up. And I've seen this now for years. The shock on their face when they realize that they have at most a 3 or 4 or 5% chance if they do extremely well through every different barrier. They see someone that's worked as a nurse for 10 years and still isn't a doctor, or they've seen someone that has given up. We've had doctors break down in our meetings and cry.
I was moved by their hopeful and frustrated faces, doctors ready and willing to work, but the reality is most will never work as doctors again.
I'm a mountain boy.
I love the mountains. When I lived in South Africa, we lived in the mountains.
Dr. Kim was immigrated to Canada a year ago. Born in South Africa, she completed her medical training in the Netherlands. English is her first language, not what one would normally expect when they think of an immigrant.
I basically put myself through med school. At one stage, I had 5 part-time jobs. The first job I had was working in a delicatessen, butchery actually, and I'm vegetarian.
Are you?
So that was difficult.
After completing med school and waiting 5 years for her immigration papers, Dr. Wasp arrived full of hope and ready to pursue a Canadian medical career.
I started finding out about the tuition and the exams, and it was only once I really applied to start paying for the fees did I see the fine print, so to speak. They cost a fortune, but it's something that we have to do. We're going to do it, and we're going to see where it takes us.
These medical exams come with a heavy financial burden. It costs over $5,000 just to take the exams. Despite the fact that Kim speaks perfect English, she still has to take an English language test.
It is ironic that I would have to do an English test as a second language, as it is my first language. So I'm going to see if we can change that. If not, it's frustrating, and it's unfortunately just part of one of those things you have to just swallow and go and do. And
with no help from the government or any other agencies, Dr. Wasp and a few IMDs get together, share their textbooks, and study every Saturday.
I've taken the initiative of meeting up with other people, and I've created a small little study group. So we're tutoring ourselves at the moment and studying for the exams ourselves.
There are courses you can take. They are designed especially for this, but they are very, very expensive, and they're more than what we can afford. And a lot of people do that and do very well through those courses. But it's too much for me to pay. It's too expensive. I can't afford it. And if you're supporting a family or you're looking after children, or you can't. You really can't. And there's no financial assistance.
Even if Dr. Was passes her exams, there is no guarantee her investment of time and money will land her a residency.
So if some of your friends, let's say your friend from Netherlands calling you, hey Kim, I want to migrate to Canada, I'm a doctor, what would you suggest?
Stay there. Don't do it.
Why not?
Because they're going to have to go through this rigmarole, and they could be working and earning and supporting themselves and their families properly there. Unless they're coming here because they want to be in Canada and not be a doctor, it would not be wise for them to do that.
After meeting Kim, I went to the College of Physicians and Surgeons of BC to meet with Dr. Elliot Phillips to find out about the college's criteria for licensing international medical doctors.
The mandate of the college is to protect the public, to assure the public that the care that they receive is competent. When people call the college or international graduates claim that we are trying to keep them out, it comes back to the standard of care that you as a Canadian expect. And the first person to say to the college when they are injured by a physician who would be perhaps an international graduate is, why did you license this person?
Work almost any place in the world.
Dr. Clement Williams has been mentoring IMDs for years. He has a completely different view.
They're all the foreign graduates we've trained starting 7 or 8 years ago. I've trained all these foreign graduates that you see in these plaques. They're all bright kids. They didn't get through medical school without being relatively intelligent, and they're quite motivated. They realize that it's now or never. This is their last chance to get into the system, so they try really hard.
Canadian medical authorities have only assessed a few select countries. Any IMDs immigrating from the rest of the world face a grueling uphill battle.
For instance, if you had an undergraduate degree from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bulgaria, Romania, Russia, such postgraduate training is unfamiliar to us.
Textbook in the website.
None of the doctors I met during the course of this documentary have come from countries which have been assessed. I asked Dr. Phillips why so few countries have been evaluated.
The college has no funding or ability, I should say ability or funding, to allow it to travel all over the world to assess such systems. We only look at the training that we're familiar with, especially with respect to family medicine.
The college that regulates licensing hasn't really changed very much in a century, back when immigration was very different. What I'd like to see next is I'd like to see the college take a look at some of those countries that most of our immigrants have come from for the last 50 years. If that requires provincial funding, that's what the government can do. And let's increase the number of those countries that are acceptable.
I went to speak with the Minister of Health to see if the government would take Patrick Cody's suggestion into consideration. Is the provincial government willing to provide more money for assessments?
Well, I wouldn't want to give sort of a definitive answer to that without having a proposal that we could give consideration to. There are some challenges around ensuring that the College of Physicians and Surgeons and others are assured that the training that they have received is appropriate to the employment that they will secure.
The health minister didn't offer much hope for those IMDs whose countries have not been assessed. For them, they are left to compete for the few residency positions available. To better their chances, many work as unpaid clinical trainees to obtain letters of recommendation. Meet Iraqi doctor Rafat Jamil.
I take care of patients just like any regular family doctor or a walk-in clinic doctor. So I interview the patients, manage their medications, their medical problems, their mental problems.
So I just interviewed Mr. AJ.
As a trainee, Rafat must work under the supervision of a fully licensed physician like Dr. Kayonet.
He has demonstrated to me an ability to assess and treat people in a way that is very, very good. So I really don't have any complaints from that point of view, and I think he's an excellent clinician. So, and patients like him. That's very important too, you know. I mean, you've got to like your doctor.
Despite Dr. Ned's glowing review, Dr. Jamil still can't sign a prescription or get paid for his work. He has passed all his exams, worked as a medical trainee for the past 5 years, and has met every requirement, but still hasn't obtained a residency.
Being a medical trainee in Canada, it's something you gotta be really lucky to do that, although it's nothing really that significant. How do I feel? I feel I'm a second-class citizen being treated this way. Although this is the best thing I could achieve at this point, but I'm frustrated.
I passed all my exams at the first trial. I didn't have to repeat any exam at all. Like, this is my certificate in Canada. It confirms that I am a member of the Canadian Medical Council. So this should be hanged on the wall, framed.
Why don't you do that?
I've been disappointed by the Canadian system, so I'm not going to put it on the wall until I'll be part of this system. Otherwise, it's just a trophy, useless trophy.